Hello, everybody. Beep. Hello, hello. Are we live? Can you guys see me? Hello, let me know if all looks well, if you can see me, if you can hear me. Let me know. How are we doing? Welcome to the Art of Practice workshop. Very excited to have you guys here. Super, super excited. We've got a great crowd. We're going to have a good time. Nothing better than making a little music on a Friday afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you are in the world. Speaking of, I saw some of you guys, I was kind of creeping on you before I started this stream, and I saw many of you were sharing where you're tuning in from, but I would like to hear it again. So let me know in the chat. Where are you tuning in from around the world today? I see some familiar faces in here as well. Welcome, Jared, Doug, Hassam, Ethan. All right. We got Arizona, Gandhi, Mexico, Rodrigo, Australia, Ethical Cobra, USA, Pennsylvania, Kansas, Utah, Texas, India, Wisconsin, France. Isn't this amazing? It's like every time I do a live stream like this or workshop, whatever, any type of live interaction where we have people from around the world, it never ceases to amaze me. It's like almost every continent literally is represented here. Geo, I see you. Germany, Idaho, Montreal, North Carolina. You're close to me, Noah. Los Angeles, very nice. All right. We do live in crazy times. There's lots of good with it too. Very cool. Jessica says, how are you, Nathan? I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking. Honored to be in the presence of a bunch of amazing people right now. Follow-up question. This is just little icebreakers here before we get started. How long have you been playing the guitar? What is your background with the guitar? Eight-string video game music. What's up? Welcome. Y'all need to follow eight-string video game music. Kyle. He's incredible. He plays arrangements on an 8-string guitar, which is insane. Let's see. We've got 1 week for Elisha. That's probably a record. What's up, Suman? 4 years for Jeremy. 2 years, 5 to 6 years, 3 years, year and a half. 1.3 years, very precise. 23 years, Jack, there you go. 20 years, 6 years. All right. 7 years, 20 years. All right, I think, oh, here we go. Barbara with the records, 57 years. Round of applause for Barbara. That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. Yeah, so we've got a little bit of everything in here, which is amazing because I'm confident that every one of you will be able to take away at least one insight from our time today, because we can constantly optimize how we practice and dig deeper into how intentional and focused and effective we are in our methods. And I love that we have just everybody, no matter what stage you are in the journey of learning the guitar, represented here. People who've just started and people who've been playing for over 50 years, and you're still hungry to learn. I absolutely love that. So let's go ahead and get officially started. Welcome to the Art of Practice workshop. Thank you so much for carving out time in your day to be here live with me and to trust me as your teacher. I am honored. That privilege is not lost on me. You could be anywhere on the internet right now, or anywhere in the world physically, but you chose to be here for this 90 minutes, and I appreciate that, and I'm going to make it worth your while. So today, we're going to be doing a group practice session where you get to observe me practice and then practice along with me as well as we learn a song together. Throughout the practice session, I'm going to be sharing practice techniques and strategies that I use that you can adopt in your own practice to eliminate mistakes and learn music faster. No matter what song you're playing or what style you're learning, the piece that we're working on today, all the stuff that we talk about as we're working through this piece will apply to any piece you're learning. There's crossover, right? So it's not just limited to what we're specifically working on today. So make sure you stay for the whole workshop if at all possible, because at the end we're going to be doing a Q&A so that I can address all of your individual challenges with your practice or the guitar in general. So while we're doing the practice session, I'm going to keep an eye on the chat a little bit, but it's going to be a little less interactive. But I'm going to carve out probably 20 to 30 minutes at the end to really just dive into your questions, because I want to make sure that each and every one of you are heard and I address your issues specifically. All right? So the piece that we are learning today is a beautiful little classical guitar tune called Adelita. I tried to pronounce it faithfully there. Y'all let me know if that was terrible or not. I've barely looked at this piece because I wanted to go in as blind as possible with you today to give you a real, raw, unfiltered look at how I learn and practice new music, to kind of show you how I troubleshoot and problem solve and approach new areas of music. So hopefully you downloaded it already, but if not, here is the link. Boom, I put it right there in the chat. And we are going to get started. So before we officially jump into the piece here, one of the big takeaways that I want you to start implementing in your practice is how you break up your practice sessions. And that's something that we don't often think about, and something that I highly recommend, that I use regularly in my practice and even in my just day-to-day work, is called the Pomodoro technique. So let me know in the chat if any of you are familiar with the Pomodoro technique. It's something that term you'll hear frequently in, productivity circles. So yeah, let me know in the chat if you've heard that term. But basically what it is you're breaking up a period of time into smaller sections of hyper-focused work with little short segments of rest in between. So it sounds simple, but if we take like what we're going to do today, we're going to do a 25-minute Pomodoro block, which is a 25-minute highly focused practice session, uninterrupted, highly focused, and then followed by a 5-minute break. You can rest, refocus, recharge, then another 25 minutes of highly focused practice, followed by a 5-minute break. And that's how you would break up an hour. If you're going to practice more than that, you rinse and repeat. But it's so important. It sounds simple, I know, but give it a try. Because I've seen so many times with my students already who have seen huge results from this really simple, easy to implement thing, because a few things happen. One, it gives us a sense of urgency in our practice that helps us keep focused, right? If we have an hour to practice, there's this kind of leisurely approach that we tend to take to give our work, because we know, okay, I have an hour to accomplish whatever it is I'm trying to accomplish, right? And we kind of just mosey along through our practice. But if we insert these little mini deadlines throughout our practice, 25 minutes, I know that I've got 25 minutes to try to accomplish what I'm going to do. And it's this kind of psychological thing that happens that automatically lasers in our focus. There's a principle called Parkinson's Law that talks about how work expands to fill the time that we give it. So if we give ourselves an hour to accomplish one task, we're going to end up taking that whole hour. Whereas if we give ourselves only 25 minutes, we subconsciously optimize our process and work at a different level so as to accomplish that same task in that shorter time. So there is this kind of subconscious psychological thing that happens here. And it helps to know that when you have segmented practice like this, it's just a good way to eliminate distractions, and it really capitalizes on this idea that our focus is a limited resource. We can't just focus 100% indefinitely. Some people can focus for longer than others, but for all of us as humans, we have limited focus. And so you've probably noticed as you play for longer periods, you start to noodle around and waste time and get distracted. You pick up your phone, right? When you put these barriers within your practice, these Pomodoro sessions where you're like 25 minutes is the only thing I'm going to do is focus on this, whatever your specific task is within your practice. No distractions, nothing else. Knowing that you just have to stay hyper focused for 25 minutes, and then at after that, you can have that 5 minutes to just like, it's a game changer. So that's what we're going to do today. So I'm going to set a timer for 25 minutes, and we're going to practice this together here. Let me know who all of you have your guitars and are planning on actually practicing along with me, or I know some of you might not be able to have your guitars right now. Let me know in the chat. But here we go. 25 minutes, hyper focused, and we're off. So, Adelita, hope you have your music in front of you. We are in a 3/4 time signature, which means it's going to count like a waltz. 1 and 2, 3. 1 and 2, 3. 1 and 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. All right. Right off the bat, let's look at what we have. Now I'm going to stop right there. Another element that I want you to take away, probably the most important thing I want you to take away from this workshop, is to totally flip how you approach your practice on its head. Most of us do what I call reactive practice. We're constantly in a state of making a mistake, trying to fix it. Make a mistake, try to fix it, right? And we get in this cycle. The problem with that is that muscle memory is a numbers game, meaning when we make a mistake, we're just more likely to make another mistake after that. Muscle memory doesn't care about whether you got it right or wrong. Your fingers are just going to do what they've been trained to do the most. So if you're allowing yourself to make a lot of mistakes in your practice, you're basically just learning and further concrete cementing into your fingers how to play that incorrectly. So what you're going to see me doing today is what I call preventive practice, where you're doing everything that you can to try to prevent mistakes from happening in the first place. So from the very beginning, you are laying a very strong foundation of positive muscle memory. When you get it right once, you're more likely to get it right again and again and again. When we get into this cycle of reactive practice, that's why you found that in some pieces that you're playing, you might have been practicing it for months and there's still like that one section that you just can't get. That's because you've had months of damage to your muscle memory that you've been doing with that section of making a mistake, making a mistake, making a mistake. And so you've got so much muscle memory baggage on your hands that they just think that's the way they're supposed to do it. So, as I did here, we're going to talk about, with preventive practice, there are 3 elements. ISP is what you want to remember. Isolate, slow down, and pause. And we'll kind of talk about each, but those are the general strategies you want to keep in mind to help you prevent mistakes, right? And so that's why at the very beginning, what did I do? I didn't go past the first measure. You might have a temptation to kind of read through the first line and continue on, whatever the case may be. I only read through that first measure. You could even isolate further than that, just the first beat. Okay? That first beat in and of itself might be kind of tricky. Let's look at that. We have a pull off from fret 12 to 11. That's going to be my fourth finger and my third finger. We're going to dive deep into some of the techniques in here as well. When I'm doing a pull off, there are some things that I'm focusing on to make sure that that's really snappy. If you're doing a pull off and it sounds like this, and you're not really hearing it, that's because you're not doing these couple of things. Number one, when you're doing a pull off, you want to make sure that you have two directions of force. Your fourth finger is pushing in to the string as you pull it down. Right? So you're maintaining that inward pressure. Lots of people mistakenly pull their finger up off of the string, and that's going to always be weak. You want to feel like you're essentially plucking the string. So inward pressure and downward pressure at the same time. The other factor that people often neglect is you've got to think about the finger that you're pulling off toward, in this case, the third finger. I want to feel substantial weight and pull. I want my arm to be pulling back and making that third finger feel very heavy so that that string won't slide and bend and move with it. That's actually what Micah just asked in the chat. What about when it kind of makes the string pop off the fretboard? Right, where you get that squeak, right? To prevent that, that's what I'm talking about here. You need weight on the finger you're pulling off to. Pull that in tightly, and that's going to prevent the string from being able to move. Your finger's going to give before the string does. Okay? You've got to keep that inward pull and inward pressure on your destination finger. Okay, so I've got that pull off clean. Then we have to shift down to the 7th fret. Here's where we can talk about, we talked about isolate, ISP for preventive practice. Here we can talk about the P, pause. This is something that people often neglect. Isolate makes sense. We can just take a small section of music. Slowing down makes sense. We can slow down. But inserting a pause, people neglect because it kind of seems like a mistake in and of itself. If I intentionally stop and then play that note, people don't practice that way because they just assume, well, I shouldn't have a pause there. That's wrong. But the idea here is that you are hesitating rather than making a mistake. The pause itself isn't a mistake. It's preventing a mistake of landing on the wrong fret with a chord change, or in this case, just a simple shift, landing not quite right, so it buzzes. If I pause and make sure my finger lands exactly where I want it to before making contact, I hover and I insert that little pause, that's preventing the mistake from ever happening. All of these strategies are supposed to make it easy to prevent mistakes, because we all know that, well, in theory, preventing mistakes sounds great, but how do we do that? You isolate in small enough sections, you slow down enough, more than you probably want, to the point that it feels easy, and then you insert pauses if you're unsure if you're gonna land it just right. And then after a little while of inserting that pause, I will not tolerate talk of rest strokes in the chat here. All right, I see you guys. That's a joke. If you don't get it, well, maybe we'll talk about it later. So I'm inserting the pause, and after a few repetitions of that, then we can start to eliminate the pause, and we've got that positive muscle memory already in place. Okay, so once I place my finger on the 7th fret, I can position my 2nd and 3rd fingers to play this little chord. Another thing I always talk about is whenever you're trying to form a chord or changing between chords, think about how you can hover your fingers, any fingers that you aren't currently using, hover them in proximity of where they're going next. So when I land this shift, I'm already hovering my second and third fingers over where they need to be, the B and G strings, so that I can then land them. That's what makes that transition feel so effortless. I'm not having to, at the last second, try to get them in place, right? Or worse, if they're way up here, and I'm gonna have to like bring them way down. Okay, so anytime you're about to form a chord or you're changing from one chord to another, think proximity. Can I hover any fingers that I'm not using in proximity over whatever string they need to transition to? We're talking about a lot of stuff here because it's kind of stream of consciousness as I'm going through this piece. So try to take notes of all these little concepts so you can apply them in your own practice and remember. And again, there will be a replay as well if you kind of miss some of the concepts we talk about. All right, but I got to start moving because we got a lot of piece to learn here. So feeling good about that. Measure 2. We've got another pull-off, so this is going to be a good pull-off exercise. Go on is already taking notes. Very good. So here we have a 4-2 pull-off. Same principle applies though. I have weight on my destination finger, so the string doesn't move, and then I keep 2 directions of force on my 4th finger. Down and in. And here, as soon as I play that 7th fret on the B string, I'm going to think proximity and position my 3rd and 4th fingers over the G and D strings to land that chord. And if you need to insert a pause so that you don't miss your mark there, that's okay. That's good. That's preventive practice. One thing that, show of hands if you're guilty of this, it's what I call the finger shimmy, where something like this, you don't quite land your fingers right, and you dance your fingers around trying to adjust them and get them just right. Right? That is killing your muscle memory. 8-string video game music, oh, always. Hassan, me, probably, yes, every day. Yeah. That's terrible for us. It's terrible for us because it's sending so many mixed signals to your fingers. That's why preventive practice is so important. This is textbook reactive practice. We're just reacting to that mistake. If I insert that pause, I can be careful to ensure they're in the right place, and then when I commit and make contact with the strings, my fingers have been sent one signal. This is what I want you to do. And next time you'll be more likely to recreate that, and again, and you have no more issues with that transition. Doug said, are you watching me? Yeah, isn't it nice when you realize you're not alone? We can all relate. So that's one, if you take away one thing from this workshop, stop the finger shimmy, insert pauses, hesitate rather than err, okay? Now, measure 3. We've got a bar. Measure 3, we got a full bar and a pull off into the bar. 2nd finger to 1st finger. So this will be a little tricky. For the sake of time, I won't go into bar technique right now, but if any of you have questions about how to make a bar chord sound clean and relatively effortless, we'll talk about that in the Q&A. So keep that in mind. But as soon as I do the pull off, I'm gonna move my 2nd finger to the 8th fret of the G string, and then add my 3rd finger. All right, let me backtrack from measure 2 to 3 to make sure I can make that transition. So, remember we talked about we talked about proximity when we're doing a transition from one chord to another. We're hovering fingers that we aren't currently using. At the end of measure 2, I can lift up my second finger to prepare the bar and pull my second finger. So lift up my first finger. Is that what I said? Lift up my first finger to prepare the bar and then move my second finger down to the high E string to prepare that so I'm not having to jump at the last second. Okay, then measure 4, we have a grace note hammer-on pull-off. This means it just happens instantly. We're not counting it as the rhythm. It's just supposed to go hammer on to 8th fret and then pull off back to the 7th instantly at the same time as the bass note. Ba-dia, 7, 8, 7. Same thing here with that pull-off. I'm keeping weight on my first finger so that it's snappy and the string doesn't move. And then I'm placing my third finger. We want to always be watching our fingers that we aren't currently using, because this is another thing that we're often guilty of. When we're not using a certain finger, they're often living way out here. They're kind of super far from the fretboard. They're tense, they're either curled up or they're sticking out. But that makes it much harder when you have to then pull that finger in to use it for the next note or the next chord. So I'm gonna watch my third finger and make sure that it's pointing at the strings, it's near where it needs to go, then it's hovering over the G string, and it's there. The rest of that measure 4, I'm going to use the open strings to shift over to 3rd position and then reach to the 7th fret. All right, measure 5, it starts over. Let's talk about the transition from measure 7 to measure 8. Something I was just thinking about there is that we have this transition from this chord to this chord. We want to make sure that we can land that, again, without mistake. So we want to isolate that. I'm just going to start right here on this chord at the end of measure 7. And then jump here. A few things that we can think about. We talked about proximity when changing chords, but that only applies to fingers that you aren't using. When you're having to use the same fingers between two chords, I think about relativity. So that's where do my fingers have to go relative to where they already are? And that's going to give you some insights into that specific chord transition that will help you navigate it without mistake. For example, if I think relativity, I think, all right, my third finger is here at the 8th fret. Where does it have to go for the next chord? Okay, it has to go to the 5th fret of the same string. So that instantly has told me, oh, that finger doesn't have to change strings. So many chord transitions, we think of it as just a blank slate. We're here, and then we're here, and then we're here, and they're not related in any way. But we start to think relativity, where are our fingers relative to where they need to go? We start to uncover things like that. So that means I can use my third finger as a guide finger, meaning it stays on the string and just shifts down to the 5th fret. Kay said, I like to make a bit of a slide from measure 7 to 8. Yeah, that's a nice effect. This is what I love about these group practice sessions too, is it's kind of collaborative. We can get ideas from each other. So I like that idea, Case, of letting that slide down. It's very kind of romantic and melancholy. All right, so that's what my third finger's doing. What does my first finger have to do? It's in the bar at the end of measure 7, and then it has to move to the 4th fret. That's a big shift, but by at least acknowledging what it has to do, I'm wrapping my head around this chord transition in a more deep and intentional way so that I know what each finger's role is rather than it just feeling like one big clump of movements, right? Okay, and then finally, what does my second finger have to do? It has to go from the 8th fret of the G string to the 5th fret of the D string. The helpful thing of acknowledging that is that at least it's only a string away. I have to shift down to the 5th fret, but it's only down to the D string. So that kind of helps to acknowledge that. Another strategy that you want to take note of when it comes to chord transitions, or really anything, you can apply this to anything in your practice, is this idea of layering. So layering is a concept where we can strip away elements of the music to make it simpler and easier, and to try to pinpoint trouble spots for us. So that can be applied in many different ways, and this is really helpful for preventive practice. But as it applies to this chord transition, you don't have to move every single finger. You can focus first on one finger at a time. I can focus just on that third finger. Can I nail that shift? Insert a pause if you need to avoid the finger shimmy. Develop that muscle memory of the exact distance that third finger has to move. Then, we're here. My second finger. I've stripped down the layers to make this chord and the movement, and it's just simplest form, one finger at a time. Then my first finger. Then you can do pairs of fingers even. So I could do, let's see, third and second. So that would be this. Even just by doing that, I notice a pattern. My third and second fingers stay on the same frets relative to each other. 8 and 8, 5 and 5. It helps to acknowledge that. I could do third and first. This will also help if you're doing these different layers, and as you start to add them back, you're doing pairs of fingers, you start to recognize, oh, I made a mistake there. You start to realize what finger is the problem causer, right? What finger is causing you the issues, and then you can troubleshoot and focus on that specifically. So layering is extremely powerful. Extremely powerful. Okay, so I'm feeling good about that transition. I did the layering one finger at a time. Now that I put it all back together, it's feeling very confident. I don't have to put that pause there anymore. All right, let me revisit here. I'm gonna go just through the first 2 lines again, and I don't normally encourage, I'm only doing this because I'm feeling confident with it. Normally there's no benefit this early on from going like 2 lines. That's not isolating enough. That's too big of a chunk for you to really retain, but I want to go back and see if there's any spots that I need to focus on a little bit more. Being very careful to play slow enough to avoid mistakes. Pause there to be safe. okay? So ISP, isolate, slow down, and pause. That should always be floating around in your mind because we always have the temptation to play too much music, right? To play from start to finish when we're not ready. That's just going to encourage reactive practice and mistakes. Slow down. We're always tempted to play too fast, too soon. Remember, you have to earn the right to play something fast. You can always slow down more to make it easy. I could play this. I have plenty of time to think about what note is next and to prepare my fingers here and to avoid mistakes. And then again, pause. Don't be afraid to intentionally insert pauses for the sake of preventing a mistake. Now, the final thing that I'm thinking about with this first section is I want to be intentional of what's melody and what's not. The melody is kind of the part that we would sing or hum, right? But if I look at this, usually in the notation, melody is indicated by notes that are stems up. So I know many of us read tabs, but if you look at the corresponding notes up above, you can kind of tell which tab number represents which note. And you can see the notes with the stems pointing up, those are melody. The notes with the stems pointing down are bass notes or accompaniment notes or just chords. The reason that's important is because melody should be played louder than everything else so that we don't just sound like this. Where everything is just very monotonous and single toned. So if I recognize melody, oh, the melody is actually just ba-da-da. It's not even that da. I think lots of times we assume that this note is melody too. But look at the notation, it's not. So I need to be careful to go loud, loud, soft. That's all melody. 1 and 2, 3. Melody, 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 melody. Soft. Soft. This is so important. Paying attention to what's melody and what's not. That's what creates that illusion that we're always chasing of sounding like multiple guitars. That's what we love about classical guitar or fingerstyle guitar, is that we can create this illusion of it being multiple guitars. But we have to create that contrast between melody being louder and everything else sounding like a second guitar under the surface. All right, that's our time though. That was our 25-minute Pomodoro. Okay, so now we're gonna do a 5-minute rest. The 5-minute rests are just as important as the work itself because they allow you to refocus. So fight the temptation in your own practice. If you're using a timer and the Pomodoro technique, don't just blow through the timer like I just did for the sake of teaching. Don't just blow through the timer. Do those rests. Get up, stretch, hydrate. The rest is important because again, it creates this intentional structure in your practice. And it allows you to be more focused in the 25 minutes if you keep those 5 minutes of rest sacred and actually adhere to them. Okay? So 5 minutes. Here we go. So within this 5 minutes, I can answer some questions as well. So feel free to get up and stretch, hydrate, whatever, or you can ask some questions. Mr. J, one of my strings just popped. Oh no. Okay. Yeah, you have 5 minutes of rest to replace it. Quick. Hassan learned something new just now. What are you referring to, Hassan? Let us know. If you don't have a question too, let us know. What's a takeaway so far? What's something that you're going to apply to your practice that you hadn't necessarily thought of before? Or you maybe have heard of, but now you're convinced you should do it. Benjamin, yeah, it's odd because I do want to play it through, but I'm going to be smart and take it slow, like you guys are saying. Yeah, it's that isolate. We play bigger chunks of music than we should. Manisha, it feels like a piano playing. Yeah, if we're careful to distinguish between melody and otherwise. Astra Game Studio says, are tabs or notes better to learn? Tabs are easier at first, but standard notation is a more complete system. Tabs don't include rhythm. If you learn how to read notes and you learn how to read rhythm with those notes, you can play a song the way it's supposed to sound that you've never heard before, because all the information's right there. Tabs assume that you know how it's supposed to sound. Let's see. Thomas, measure 4. Why not repeat the E at the 9th fret? Let's see. Yeah, so you could, in measure 4, we're talking about different fingering options. That's the beauty of the guitar, is that we can play the same notes in different places. And so what's written here, I could go, instead of 9th fret, open, open, 3rd, 7th, I could stay 9th fret, open, back to 9th fret, and then I could do 8th fret and 7th fret. That works. I would say whatever you prefer there, Thomas. I like the feel and sound of going to the open string there. Something about that just feels satisfying to me. But that's the thing about fingerings, is that sometimes there's not a clear winner, that one is more physically optimal than the other. Sometimes it comes down to sound. The open versus the 9th fret will sound a little different, and just the feeling of it. I like that feels cool to me. I like that. Let's see. Go on. So is it bad practice to read tabs? No. Some people never learn to read music, and that's okay. It depends on what your goals are. But if reading tabs gets you to practice and gets you to learn sooner, do it. And then if you're ready for a next level, challenge yourself to read standard notation. Let's see. I'm going to read some of the takeaways. Branislav, I learned I need more practice with pull-offs. So it's not about having the chords provided, it's learning how to figure out the fingering yourself. There is benefit to learning, and trying different fingerings, and that's a really kind of fun part of the problem-solving aspect of learning a piece anyways, kind of questioning the fingerings, because they might have recommended fingerings and you might come up with something that you like better. In the classical guitar world especially, for some of these pieces that a lot of people play, people will get in conversations of like, oh, well, I play it this way, or no, I play it this way. And there's this, it's cool how different people can approach the same notes different ways. Cinema to guitar, definitely taking away the intentional pauses. I always consider pauses mistakes, but they don't have to be. Yes, if they're intentional, because think about it. You're not necessarily training your fingers to pause. Fingers aren't memorizing. Fingers are, maybe this is a good way to put it. Fingers are memorizing movements, not the lack of movement. So if you're pausing, you're preventing movement, and then you're doing intentional correct movement. So your fingers are going to remember the movement, not the lack of movement. And so if that movement is wrong and you move to the wrong place and then shimmy, your fingers are going to remember that. They're not going to remember a lack of movement. Let's see. Alexander said, Nathan, how do we choose the fingering and where to play on the neck of the guitar if we don't have the tablature? So that's where tablature is nice, having it both like this, because you can see specifically this E, oh, I'm supposed to play it at the 5th fret instead of open, or instead of the 9th fret of the G. Short answer for that is, I would say, because it's time to jump back in, I would say look at the context. Whenever you're choosing fingerings, look at context, before and after. So, if I'm, let's say, a good example of this actually is measure 7 to 8 that we spent a lot of time working on. If I'm just reading the notation for measure 8, G, B, E, I could just play that open, and that totally negates all the transition work that we just did. I could just go. And I think some people might have mentioned that in the chat earlier, but this it has a warmer sound, so maybe you prefer, even though it's a little harder physically, maybe you prefer that sound. But my point there is that we can look, as I determine what options I have. Okay, I can play this here, I could play this here, I could play this here, I could do that. Once I determine my options, then I look at the context and say, well, which of these options makes sense based on what's happening right before or what's happening after? All right, time to get back to work. Pomodoro session number 2. All right, we're gonna do this Pomodoro session. We're gonna have another break, and then we're gonna jump into the Q&A. So we gotta make this next 25 minutes really count. So we got to try to finish the piece with that amount of time. Okay, so continuing on to measure 9. So here I'm doing a little half bar in measure 9. We've switched to a major key here as well. Adding my second and third fingers, then my fourth finger. Here's a little trick I often teach my students. In measure 9, when we're transitioning from this chord to this chord, we can do what I call the legato illusion. So write that down too, legato illusion. What this means is, so legato is this idea of connecting our notes, right? There's no silence between the notes. We want the melody to be flowing and connected. The problem with that is that on the guitar, when we're changing chords and moving our fingers and we have to lift them off the strings, that stops the sound. And so we run the risk of having this choppy sound. So there's a way when we're changing chords to kind of navigate that and cheat almost in a way that makes it sound legato even when we have to pick fingers up. So in this case, when I play this melody note with my fourth finger, I can hold that note down as I lift my other fingers up to prepare the chord. Hold the fourth finger, move the first and second, boom, and then I only let go of the fourth finger when I place those fingers. And what that does is that if we're playing the melody louder like we should, our ear, or your audience's ear, gravitates toward the melody. They're listening, they're listening for that melody, and so they're not going to really notice that you let go of those chord tones underneath. They're going to hear that the melody is connected, and so that kind of overwrites in their brain and makes them feel like just everything is nice and legato and connected. So find tons of ways where you can apply that. Always be looking for, okay, can I at least hold the melody down here while I pick up my other fingers and move them? And again, in measure 10. That's an important part of everybody's practice. Incessantly tuning your guitar. Measure 11, I'm going back to this half bar, adding my second finger, just my second finger to the 5th fret. What I did here, insert intentional pauses as I'm shifting up to the 12th fret. And then I want to aim small, miss small. I want to look at where I'm going and let my finger meet where my eyes already are. So I'm staring down that 12th fret. And I'm letting my finger stop when it meets my eyes, rather than just kind of following my finger as it goes. Okay, then we have a bar at the 9th fret, and the 3rd finger playing the 11th fret, and we're having to do a quick hammer-on pull-off. Here we need to still keep, I know we got the bar going, we'll probably talk about that more again in the Q&A, but my 3rd finger needs that weight to keep that pull-off nice and punchy. And then, whoo, measure 12. That's gonna be, measure 12 is gonna be the one that we're gonna have to spend the most amount of time on in our practice of this piece, whether it's just today or if you continue to work on this piece, because we've got a stretch. We've got this bar on the 7th fret, 2nd finger on the 8th fret, 3rd finger on the 9th fret, and then I hammer on to the 11th and pull off. So nothing really is different here. We just have to be extra intentional about these things that we've already talked about related to the pull-off to make it work. Meaning, I have to be extra careful to keep that weight on that 3rd finger. It's harder to feel it here because of the stretch, but if I'm careful to keep that weight there and to not let that 3rd finger move or pull the string around, that makes all the difference. And then you'll notice big stretches like this don't have to be pretty. Sometimes we just have to do what we have to do. So my 4th finger is pretty much perfectly straight. I'm making contact with the flat pad of my finger rather than the fingertip. And that's okay, because I gotta do what I gotta do there. I can't reach that with a curved position. And then I have to be quick to make sure that I'm still pulling inward and downward on that. So remember, there's not just this kind of cookie cutter hand position where everything should always just look nice and proper and pretty. It's okay in certain extreme scenarios like this to flatten out those fingers if you have to. Right? So even I'm wrestling with that spot here. So we're coming from all right, the other thing we want to practice there before I just sit and wrestle with that hammer-on pull-off, I want to make sure I can transition there. So before even worrying about that, we're here at the end of measure 11. I can hover, thinking proximity, I can hover my 2nd and 3rd fingers over the G and high E strings, and then drop them. So I essentially just shift over, place the full bar, and that just pulls my 2nd and 3rd fingers into place. Notice this is a form of layering and isolating. I'm isolating just the transition point. If I start here every time, which we so often do, that's A, wasting time because I don't need to work on that right now. I need to go straight to the source. And it's just distracting us because we've got, our mind is like, okay, I gotta go 4th fret, so shift, put hammer on, pull off, and then transition. You can't focus purely on the transition, so isolate just the transition. And then I'm doing kind of layering where I'm taking away the hammer-ons and pull-offs right now. I'm stripping away that layer and just going, so after the hammer-on, pull-off, it's just the 9th fret. And then, so I want to make sure I can at least do that. I wasn't sure if I landed quite right, so I hesitated. There it is. There it is. I'm just getting in some good positive repetitions. A huge mistake you can make is getting something right once, especially after making a bunch of mistakes. You finally get it right once, and then you just move on. And you think you got it. Because remember, muscle memory is a numbers game. So if you've gotten it right wrong, or if you've gotten it wrong more than you've gotten it right, you're still gonna get it wrong, most likely. So when you get it right once, capitalize on that, and immediately get it right again, and again, and again. And then it will start to sink into your fingers. Starting to get it. That's rough. That's a tough section. That's how I would approach it. I would just need some more repetitions there. For the sake of time, I'm gonna keep moving. So after that, 4th finger to the 10th fret, bar, 2nd finger, 3rd finger. And then that's 9th fret. I wasn't sure, so I paused. Benjamin said, anyone else's pinky falling off? Yes. I feel you. So here the melody is moved to this beautiful inner line. So here I like to play that with my thumb. So on that first, I'm doing this kind of staggered thumb. It almost sounds like a cello double stop. And then soft on those open E's to create that distinction. And then if you need to pause here, hesitate rather than err. Place your fingers. Another big shift. Look at where you're going. And then 9th or 8th fret. Cool. Here's an example. I think I'm gonna use, yeah, in measure 14, after the 13th fret, when I go to the 8th fret, I'm going to use my second finger. And this is where paying attention to context is so important. Because if I look at what comes after, I have to do a bar and second finger on the 9th fret, and then hammer on, pull off. Okay, so if I use my second finger on the 8th fret, I can treat it like a guide finger, just shift over and prepare my bar. Boom. If I use my first finger, then I have to move for a bar. That doesn't work too well. And I don't want to prepare the bar early because that would cut the low E bass note. So I'm going, again, measure 14, second finger. So here, I'm going first and third finger in measure 15. And then fourth finger on fret 6. And I can hover that. Think proximity. It's a free finger, so I can hover it and pull it into position. That allows me to place my third and first fingers on the 4 and 6. So when choosing fingering, like I talked about, look at context, look at what comes before, what comes after. It feels like it would make sense to do that, but then, well, you could use your first finger and pull it back as a guide. That's also an option, but I like, since my fourth finger is free, thinking of what comes before, use that, and then first and third. There it is. Bar chord with third and fourth fingers. Okay. Now, we covered so much just getting through that alone, and normally I wouldn't try even to go through all of those lines in just an hour, but for the sake of teaching you and equipping you with everything you need to practice this piece, I worked through it. But this kind of brings me to the next tip I want to teach you, is to switch your practice from task-oriented to goal-oriented practice. Most of the time, we sit down and we're like, I'm going to practice Adelita today. That's just a task. We can't really quantify if you're improving or not, or actually making progress. It's the difference between feeling busy or actually being productive. I could sit here and practice Adelita for 2 hours and at the end of it be like, what did I really accomplish there? So, no, we should switch to goal-oriented practice where we're specific about what we're going to do in our session that day. So that would be an example of I'm going to memorize the first 2 measures. That's very specific. At the end of the practice session, I can say whether or not I accomplished that, and that's going to give me more motivation and confidence because I'm like, wow, I accomplished something today. I am better at this piece than I was at the beginning. Okay? It could be I'm going to use my metronome, which that's another tip right there. Use your metronomes in your practice, not just to help you get faster, but to hold you accountable to staying slow in your practice. But it could be, I'm going to work the first 2 measures. Let's say if I set it to 60. Just that much. Isolate further if you need to prevent mistakes. I'm gonna work from 60 BPM up to 70 BPM in my practice today. That's a goal. Whoops. So I made a mistake. I'm gonna prevent that from happening again. So I'm gonna turn off the metronome for a minute and insert a pause. There it is. I confused the two chords. Okay, bring it back. Just looping that section, not going any further. I'm isolating. Okay, now I'm going to go up to 65. That's the power of the metronome to help you speed up, is that 60 to 65 is barely noticeably faster. The problem that we do when we try to speed up without the metronome is that we jump too drastically and it kind of shocks our fingers. Okay, so I'm going to go to 70 now. And there you go. I accomplished my goal. I set the goal to do 70 BPM for those two measures. Then I could do, all right, 70 BPM for that whole line and work from there. But goal-oriented practice. Do not allow yourself to just move from task to task to task. Move from goal to goal to goal. Specific, measurable, preferably write it down before your practice session so you know exactly what you're going to do when you sit down with the guitar. And then the final thing that I want to encourage you to start incorporating into your practice is intentional memorizing. Intentional memory. Most of us, when we memorize a piece, it just kind of happens by accident after you repeat something enough. The problem with that is that also kind of encourages reactive practice, because you are, when we don't have a piece memorized, we're spending the majority of our time just looking at the score. If we're looking at the score, what are we not looking at? Our hands. And if we're not looking at our hands, we're more likely to miss the note, the string, the fret, and we're going to memorize slower because we're not visualizing what our hands and what our fingers are doing. And we're not evaluating our technique. We're not able to kind of see what's happening to say, oh, this finger's kind of flying way out here. I need to bring it in closer. We're not going to notice those things because we're staring right here. So memorizing sooner rather than later allows you to watch your hands sooner in those formative stages of learning a piece. Okay? So by intentional memory, it's simple. You basically isolate again, so just those two measures, and instead of defaulting to look at the score and then maybe looking at your hand once you get it memorized, default to looking at your hand, and only when you get stuck or can't remember the next note, then you stop and look at the score. Reflect on it, look back at your hand, and try to do it from memory again. That's going to intentionally memorize it a lot quicker. It's going to stick, and it's going to stick faster because you're actually seeing yourself execute it too. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to try to remember the first couple measures. I think it's an A bass note, but I'm going to pause and double check. A bass note, 10th fret, pull off. Okay, so. All right, let me try that again. All right. I think the next part, I'm going to try to go to the next 2 measures now. I think that's when we had to go to the bar, but I'm going to double check. Yep, full bar, pull off, second finger, chord, and then ba-dum. Okay, so what's the next? 8th fret of the G string. Okay. I'm just taking just that, 2 beats, 3 beats, just that measure. So let me put that together. I'm blanking. Here it is. By forcing myself to think about it, that's reinforcing it stronger. Rather than just immediately looking at the score, I blanked for a second, but I thought and wrestled with it and then remembered it. And then I think this is hammer on pull off. Okay. 9th fret, open, open. Whoops. Okay, I'm gonna double check, hesitate. I'm not gonna make that mistake again. Put a pause in there to think. Just like that, I've got the first line memorized. That would have taken me so much longer if I would have just stuck just looking at the score. I compare that to when I'm driving and I'm using my phone, like the Maps app on my phone, to tell me where to go. I just turn off the part of my brain that remembers how to get there. I just rely on the GPS, to where next time if I have to drive it again, I won't remember because I didn't pay attention. I knew I had the GPS telling me where to go. Same thing. If I'm always just relying on the notes to tell me what to play, I'm turning off that part of the brain that actively forces myself to intentionally memorize that. All right, well, that was our second 25-minute Pomodoro session. I want to summarize what we talked about because I know we covered so much in there. I wanted to cram as much as we could while still kind of going through learning a piece. And so the replay will be available so you can kind of go back and digest some of that. But one, I'm going to summarize what some of the things that we talked about, some key points that you can write down. And then 2, I want you to share what's like a big takeaway from our work together over the last 50 or so minutes. So first of all, we talked about the Pomodoro technique. Use the Pomodoro technique in your practice to break up longer segments, like an hour, into 20 or 25 minutes of highly focused practice, then 5 minutes of rest. 20, 25, highly focused, rest. That's going to keep you more on target. That's going to keep you more focused. And because of Parkinson's law, where work expands to fill how much time you give it, you're going to accomplish more because you're going to work with more urgency with those mini deadlines. All right, we talked about preventive practice. Stop reacting to your mistakes. We default to reactive practice, and we make a mistake, we fix it. We make a mistake, we fix it. Preventive practice. Prevent the mistakes from happening in the first place so that you can build positive, strong muscle memory faster from the very beginning. And that's with ISP. Isolate, slow down, and don't be afraid to insert those intentional pauses. We talked about briefly using a metronome, right? The benefit of not only helping you gradually speed up, but to help you hold you accountable to staying slow. We talked about goal-oriented practice instead of task-oriented practice. Be specific And at the end, you'll actually have tangible results, things that you've accomplished, and then also ultimately you'll learn the music faster. We talked about layering when it comes to chord transitions, whatever the case may be. Strip away the layers, simplify it, maybe just move one finger at a time, and then build the layers back up. Once you've focused on those smaller movements, build it back up, and it'll be easier. That's an effective way to follow preventive practice as well. And then we talked about intentional memory. Go just like one measure at a time, and instead of just defaulting to look at the page, default to looking at your hand and wrestle with the memory of it. And then when you get stuck, look at the page, dissect it. Okay, go back to your hand and try to execute it from memory and rinse and repeat. Okay, so those are some of the things that we talked about. Some takeaways I'm getting from you guys are the legato illusion. Super helpful, right? Holding that melody down while you have to pick up other notes underneath so that it still sounds connected because we're listening for that melody. Hossam, the Pomodoro technique, which notes to play hard and softer, right? Melody louder than everything else. Preventive practice, pauses. Look at the notes and adjust which fingers to use to reduce movements. Goal, practice, and try to memorize. Excellent, Hossam. You really hit all of them. Case, go slow, repeat a lot, and earn the right to speed up. That's right. Awesome. Yeah, Hossam, I was learning a piece. I paused it to have a look at this video. I learned so much. Thank you. You are very welcome. Gandhi, I learned not to keep struggling with the music score and instead develop the visual finger action. Right, so you're talking about watching your hand rather than just staring at the score. Let's see. Ask that question again for me, Roy, when we get to the Q&A. Jeremy, my takeaway, everything. Elisha, takeaway, never knew that melody is notated with the stem up. Very good. Violin, it's all melody, right? Let's see. Yeah, we're gonna have lots of time for the Q&A. Don't worry, I'm gonna leave time for that. I know we're running a little long here, but I'm gonna leave time for it. Okay, great, awesome takeaways. So I want to ask you guys a question here before we jump into the Q&A. It's my turn to ask a question first. How would you like to join me for a group practice session like this every single week? All right, I know we had to kind of rush through, try to covering a lot today, but imagine if you could do this with me every single week and we could dive deep into a little excerpt of music like this every single week to further uncover how you should be practicing, learn more music together. All right, yes, please, that would be amazing. That would be incredible. Okay, so if you don't mind, I want to share something with you for just a couple minutes before we jump into the Q&A. So I'm going to share my screen here. Boom. All right, can everybody see this? If that sounds amazing to you, I want to invite you to my Beyond the Guitar Practice Club. All right, this is my exclusive practice community with weekly live streamed group practice sessions just like this, where you can observe and practice along with me as I teach you how to practice efficiently and effectively so that you can see unprecedented growth in your playing. We're also going to get new musical examples to practice each week. So your practice is going to be fun and fresh every single week. You have something new to look forward to practice while continuously honing different areas of your technique. And then it's going to have a private community of like-minded guitarists, right? We've seen in the chat here, so many of you can relate to each other and what you're struggling with or what you're working on. Having an entire community of guitarists just like you, where you can log your practice for added accountability to make sure you're showing up and practicing every single day, and to ask questions to myself and other members as you practice throughout the week. I'm gonna just share some of this, the page here that kind of describes what you can expect in this club in case you're interested. But I wanna ask, we've probably all wondered, right? You kind of see some guitarists that seem to improve so quickly and effortlessly, But for you, your experience is that just progress feels super slow, right? Like I say here, like a slog through the mud. The thing I want to encourage you is that it's not about what they're learning. We're always kind of chasing those magic drills or those exercises. We're trying to find that one thing that's going to take us to where we want to be. There's no one perfect guitar course that is going to have all the secrets to guitar mastery that you somehow are missing, right? It's about how they practice. It's not about what they learn. It's about how they practice. They've cracked the code to focused, efficient, and consistent practice so they're able to see real, tangible progress in their playing every single day. There's a reason why I'm able to learn my own arrangements in a week. That's kind of the deadline I give myself. I have to learn, I arrange it, learn it, release it on YouTube in the span of about a week. And that's because of these practice methods that I've learned over the years. I've seen this in my own students as well. I've taught hundreds of students. Many of them excel and reach new heights in their playing every single week, while some just get stuck. It's unfortunate, but it happens. Working on the same concepts and techniques for months after month. So that kind of begs the question, am I teaching each of these students differently? Am I kind of just giving the best tips to some of them and then, not teaching the others the good stuff? No. It's not because some of my students are more talented, right? I talk about talent a lot and how just hard work and focused work trumps talent all the time. So no, it's not about talent. The difference is because the students who excel actually apply and incorporate the practice techniques that I teach them each week in their own practice to ensure that they are getting the most efficient and consistent practice possible. So most guitar courses fail you because they only teach you what you need to know, right? And even so, if they're the best teachers out there aren't just going to teach you the what. They're going to teach you how to actually apply that knowledge in your practice. So that's why I made the Practice Club, and I want to invite anybody who's interested to join. Just a couple more minutes here. I just want to share what you can look at, what you can expect in the club to see if it's a good fit. Again, we've got these weekly group live streams. It's actually over on Zoom, so it's even more interactive where we can see each other practice, and we learn a new piece of music every week. So again, you're not going to be just stuck playing the same pieces for week after week after week. You've got something new to look forward to, and it's short enough that you can still work on your bigger, longer term projects. But the beauty of this is that every new piece that you tackle is going to have new practice techniques and new tips that we can kind of dig into and that I can share with you that's going to help you apply to other pieces that you're learning. And the more music that you learn, if you're intentional about learning something new every week, you're going to end up just learning how to learn music faster. And that is such a good feeling when you can not spend months trying to play one piece, right? And so that's what we work toward together in these group live streams. Okay? You're also going to get access to the Practice Club Discord. This is where our community lives. And we've got a section in there where you log your practice. You just hit a little check mark when you've practiced for the day, and there's this sense of camaraderie and accountability to where you want to keep showing up every day and hitting that check mark and practicing, and you don't. It develops this habit that you actually stick to, right? Having that accountability and that community is so powerful, and the people in there are just the salt of the earth, right? The community that we already have in there are always ready to help. I'm in there. My community manager, Matt Fish, who's an incredible guitarist, is in there to help answer your questions as well. So with all this, it's only going to cost you $19 a month. I wanted to make it super affordable. So if you want to join me in a community every single week to transform how you practice, to learn new music every week, and to ultimately learn how to learn music faster and to play the way that you have dreamed of playing, $19 a month. You can enroll now if you click the button below this workshop. And I'm only accepting new students until next Friday. August 12th at midnight. So you want to get in there ASAP to kind of show what some of the members are saying. And I'm curious, do we have any Practice Club members in here right now? If we have any current Practice Club members, I would love to hear what your experience in the club has been and how it's impacted you. But to kind of scroll up here and see what some of them are saying, Nathaniel shared one time in the Discord, today's practice session was great. I've never experienced practicing with other people. I've always done it alone and then went to a lesson. I was surprised by how much I learned by practicing with others. I also enjoyed being able to see other people on the Zoom feed, right? So this collaborative practice is so, it's such a cool thing and it's so impactful. You can learn so much. Tori said, I think my practice has been pretty good. I've been able to practice almost every day this week, and I've gotten more progress on a piece done in a week than I've ever been able to prior to changing my practice methods. That's huge. More progress in a week than ever before. All right, let's see. Ollie said, feeling these new practice strategies becoming habits already. Feels like half the effort and double the reward compared to before. Scott said, he was on an 18-day practice streak, which was amazing. The big win is that I'm actually improving with each practice now. And then Cole said, hey, just wanted to say that even after just 1 week of this program, I can already see so much more patience in myself while practicing. Thank you for putting this program together for us to learn a better way to practice. Very cool. So yeah, Thomas, he's in the practice club. He said, I'm in it and learn a new tip each week, looking in the live chat here. Very cool. Somebody's asking what day. Currently, the sessions every week are on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. And if you can't catch them live, the replays, the recordings are uploaded and available literally the same day. So the other thing, and we're gonna wrap up here and move to the Q&A, but I do want to make sure, like, if it's not for you, it's not for you. But I want to kind of take all the risk myself. So I'm giving you all a 30-day money-back guarantee so that if you want to go in and try it, come for 4 weekly group sessions, try out the community, watch the archived recordings, and if you're like, this isn't really for me, just email me and I'll give you your money back, right? I'm not trying to, trick anybody into buying something that I don't believe in. I think the Practice Club is amazingly powerful in how it will transform your practice, but if it's not for you, just email me and you'll get your money back within 30 days. So there's really no risk in trying it out. Finally, if you sign up this week, you're going to get some amazing bonuses. I put together a mini course called Perfect Practice that will teach you how to set up your practice environment in a way that maximizes focus and efficiency and minimizes distractions. It's going to teach you how to build a sustainable, consistent practice routine that you'll actually stick with, how to boost your productivity by switching from task-oriented practice to goal-oriented practice, which we talked about some today, how muscle memory actually works so you can learn music faster, how to eliminate mistakes with preventive practice versus reactive practice. We also talked about that some today. And then the 8 practice habits that are killing your progress and how to avoid them. And then next, the second bonus, if you sign up for the annual plan where you get 2 months free, you also get the Guitar Pro Handbook mini course. And in the Practice Club, every musical example we give you is a PDF, but also a Guitar Pro file. And this course will teach you how to use Guitar Pro to make your practice simpler, more efficient, and more effective. You'll learn the fundamentals of rhythmic notation. You'll practice identifying and notating rhythms by ear. And with an in-depth tutorial, you'll learn how to easily and quickly navigate Guitar Pro. And if you don't have the Guitar Pro software, as part of the bonus course, the team at Guitar Pro have offered to give us a 20% discount for all my Practice Club members. And even if you're not interested in the Guitar Pro software, you'll benefit from learning about rhythmic notation fundamentals. So just to summarize here, what you're getting if you join the practice club: access to weekly live group practice sessions with me and the archive of previous session recordings, $400 value. We've already got several months of archived recordings that you can go back through and learn a ton from each one of those, and there's so much fun music to play, most of which are my own arrangements. New music to play every week to keep your practice fresh and exciting. Access to the exclusive Practice Club Discord server with the community. Then the bonus Perfect Practice mini course. And if you do the annual plan, the bonus Guitar Pro Handbook mini course. So the total value would be $584 for all this. But again, if you join, you're gonna just pay $19 a month, or you can get 2 months free and the bonus Guitar Pro Handbook if you pay up front with the annual plan for $190 a year. All right? So you can get all the details. You can learn more about this to see if it's a good fit for you by clicking the button down below. And definitely let me know if you join today while we're live. Let me know in the chat so that I can thank you personally while we're live here. Okay? So thank you for letting me share that. I really appreciate you guys. And let's go on to the Q&A. I know we're running late here, but I'm going to reserve another 20 minutes. I'm setting 20 minutes on the clock for us to focus on some Q&A. All right. Riley, hey Nate, I want to learn music theory, but as a guitar player it feels trickier because of the non-linearness. Any tips for getting started? I know the fretboard, don't know where to go from there. Riley, I would say to get started, one of the most practical music theory concepts you can learn is learning your triads. In fact, I have a free training. If you've done my Fretboard Freedom training, you can go to my website and get that for free. It teaches you how to build chords with the root, the third, and the fifth. So like a C major chord consists of the notes C, E, G. It teaches you how to come up with that. And so if you just practice building your triads all across the neck, that's going to be super powerful for you, not only to further reinforce your knowledge of the fretboard, but you'll recognize triads in pieces of music that you're learning, so you'll learn them quicker because of that. And if you're doing anything creative like arranging or composing, knowing where you can build chords anywhere across the fretboard, super powerful. So that's where I would start. Learn your triads. All right. Let's see here. Marquita, I will think about the practice club. That's $240 a year, and I'm on a limited budget. I need to confer with my fiance administrator, or finance administrator, aka husband. Yeah, no problem, Marquita. And if you all have any questions, email me at nathan@beyondtheguitar.com. And I'll be happy to answer that. Let's see. Elisha, how would you hold the guitar if you don't have a footstool or guitar lifter thing? I like how you hold it in The Last of Us Part 2. Is that what you'd recommend? I don't remember what I did in that video. This really is the superior playing position. Having the neck elevated is just so much more ergonomic. It allows you to use the weight of your arm, which is so important. So I really do recommend sitting like this. If you are just really anti doing that, then I would recommend at the very least, let's see here. I use the Sage work, by the way, which is awesome. At the very least, what do I do? This leg, yeah. Cross your leg over like this. Just kind of cross your legs, and that elevates it up a little bit like this. Either leg. Maybe I do this leg. Yeah, kind of either one works. But at least it raises the guitar up and it gets the neck elevated a little bit. So that's what I would do as a bare minimum. All right, let's see. I know we've got lots of questions. I'm going to get to as many of them as we can. Gawan, what are your thoughts about fingernails on the right hand? Yeah, I think they're super helpful. You don't have to have them, but they are only an advantage. So I shape mine to be kind of like a ramp. So I make contact with the shortest point, and then they get longer and the string ramps off. So that's kind of how I shape mine. You can have them, you don't have to have them as long as mine to still have nails and still benefit from them. The main thing about playing with nails is that you want to focus on the contact point to make sure that you're making contact in the sweet spot where the nail meets the flesh. That's the benefit of this ramp shape, is that you make contact at the shortest point of the nail where you're touching flesh and nail at the same time when you first make contact with the string. And that gives you the best of both worlds. That gives you the warmth of the flesh, but then the clarity and punch of the nail. Elisha, recommended book for a beginner who can't have a teacher. Then I would say Solo Guitar Playing by Frederick Node. N-O-A-D. N-O-A-D. Jack, any advice on staying relaxed muscularly when learning a song / playing? First of all, the benefit of slow practice is it allows you to be more conscious of that, of any tension that you have stored up. So I would say, again, really emphasize slow practice as much as possible. And then I would focus on using the weight of your arm. That's really like the foundation of your fretting hand technique, is relying on, instead of squeezing between my finger and my thumb to play notes, which is how we automatically just assume that's how we play guitar, instead use the weight of your arm. My shoulders are dropped and my arm feels like dead weight, and it's essentially just hanging on the fretboard to the point where I could take my thumb off and that's going to lend itself to a much more relaxed technique. So the thumb stays on the back of the neck, but it's relaxed. So to break the habit of squeezing between your fingers and your thumb, you might have to spend some time where you just temporarily lift it off, get the feeling of what it feels like to just hang on that note as pure dead weight. This is where the elevated neck comes into play. Tilting the guitar back toward yourself a little bit will help. And then hang on that note, feel that weight, and then put the thumb back on while keeping it relaxed. And I recommend trying to embrace that concept with a new piece, because it's really hard to break bad habits on music that we've already been playing because, again, of how powerful muscle memory is. So that's another benefit of the practice club, for example, where we have a new little short piece of music to play every week that gives you a blank slate and a clean canvas to apply these concepts and techniques to every single week. So you're not carrying that negative baggage of muscle memory in, but rely on the weight of your arm. That's extremely important. Ethan, very encouraging to see that even though you're an awesome player, that we all go through similar hurdles in our practicing. Makes me feel like I can definitely get better as long as I practice right. Awesome, Ethan. Yeah, none of us are perfect, and that's one reason why I wanted to kind of bring you behind the scenes to show you like what real practice looks like. Even with a professional guitarist, you know, we have to put the work in. It doesn't just come automatically. And again, that's why I wanted to start the practice club as well, is that you get to see that real look every single week. I think with social media and YouTube and just everything, we're used to just seeing these like perfect performances. And it really bums us out because we're like, well, is it just me? Am I the only one that just doesn't play perfectly? But the reality is you're seeing these, you know, multiple takes put together, and you're seeing this perfect image that we want you to see, and you're not seeing the reality behind it. And so I want to be as transparent about that as possible. Nicole, is it a bad idea to learn multiple pieces at once? Should I focus on just one piece at a time, or is it okay to keep myself practicing different pieces? Nicole, it's fine as long as you do goal-oriented practice where every practice session, you have specific goals for what you're working on this piece and specific goals for what you're working on in this piece. And then again, you're using a timer, whether it's the Pomodoro technique or just any block of time to dedicate, all right, I'm spending this much time on this piece with these goals and this much time on this piece with these goals, so that you don't neglect anything. One of the problems with trying to learn too much at the same time is that you can end up playing just one piece for 5 days, and then you realize like, oh, I haven't touched this piece in 5 days, and then it suffers because of it. So you just have to be more intentional, goal-oriented, and use a timer to make sure that you leave time to look at everything, right? That nothing gets neglected. Roy, overthinking question. The grace note hammer-ons and pull-offs are written with the chord played on the end of the pull-off, but you're playing them at the initial note, then doing the hammer-on pull-off. Yeah, generally how grace notes are written, so we're talking about like measure 4 of Adalita. You can play them before the beat. There's 2 types of grace notes, where they're played before the beat and then they end with the bass note, or they can be played on the beat. They just look like they're before the beat because they had to be kind of shoved in there. Most often we play them on the beat, meaning with the bass note. That's the most common interpretation of grace notes. But in many cases, you can still play them as it looks more like, where the bass note comes in after the hammer-on pull-off. All right, prenome. If you encounter a really difficult part like measure 12, do you isolate it but also continue to learn what's next, or do you always master the piece measure by measure? No, you can bounce around. There are going to be sections that take longer, so you can have that your goal to work on that specific section in your practice, but then you can still have other goals so that you're still moving forward. Because it also, I mean, we want to be realistic. It can drive us crazy if all we're doing is wrestling with the really hardest part of a piece. That being said, I would prioritize that and put it first in your practice, because being self-aware, we often procrastinate and put off the hard stuff, and we focus on the stuff we're already good at, right? And so then the hard stuff gets neglected. So be honest with yourself and prioritize that really challenging measure. Do that first, work on that for however much time you allot, and then go on to the other goals. And that way you can kind of have the best of both worlds. Let's see. Lorena, I have to go back to work. I'll probably email you about the practice club. Thank you so much for such a great teaching. Yeah, glad to have you here, Lorena. Happy to answer any email, any questions you have. Feel free also, if any of you have questions about the practice club here now, you can ask as well. Casper, any tips on hitting the right notes while also doing a percussive strike with the thumb or the right strings? Yeah, so if we're talking about right, doing little percussive hits with the thumb, the key to playing a note at the same time as a percussive hit is that it's a down strum. That's something that people often miss. When I'm playing the note, I'm strumming the note with the back of my finger. For me specifically, the back of my eye fingernail, while simultaneously hitting with my thumb. So, I'm trying to come up with a little groove here. You know, something like that. Yeah, the idea is that I'm hitting with the back of my nail, and to help with the accuracy of that, I'm doing strategic muting. So, for example, you might notice here I'm playing the note with my first finger, but I'm using my second finger to block the G string up above. So I'm playing the B string 5th fret, I'm just lightly touching the G string so that if my strum accidentally hits that G string, it's muted so I don't hear it. And then I position my first finger so that it's not super curved and it's actually blocking the high E string, the string below. So this way, both surrounding strings are muted. So I can strum and just hit that one string, or just hear that one string even though I'm hitting others. All right, we got about 5 more minutes. Kong says, when playing, is it all right to stabilize my right hand by anchoring it to the side, or is it a bad thing? Yeah, you don't want to anchor your pinky or ring finger into the top of the guitar like that, touching it while you're playing. Because if you think about it, we have all this connective tissue in our hands to where when one finger moves, the others want to move with it. And so if we're locking our fingers into the soundboard, that kind of restricts that movement. So you want your fingers to be able to move freely. That being said, you can plant your fingers on the strings sometimes, because even though that might restrict your movement some, it's to a lesser extent because they're closer. Putting them down here are further than your other fingers, so that's going to make a more drastic difference. So if I'm like playing, let me give an example here. I think I felt it, yeah, when I go to measure 14. Here, I'm resting my A finger on the B string. I'm resting my A finger on the B string while I'm plucking I, M. A finger is ring finger, for those of you who don't know. I, M, A. So I'm resting here, and I'm playing index, middle, and that helps too when I do this hammer-on pull-off. By resting my finger there, it also helps ensure that my pull-off doesn't accidentally strum the other strings. So it is okay to sometimes stabilize and support either with our thumb, right? Like if I'm not playing anything with my thumb can rest on the string. That's a great stabilizer, right? Or you can stabilize with some other fingers if they're free. But I wouldn't rely on it. I don't have to do it, right? I can keep my fingers free floating and still play the same thing. So it can be helpful, but you don't want it to be a crutch, if that makes sense. DBH said, is the practice club only for classical players? What would the benefits be, say, to an electric guitar player? No, it's definitely not just for classical guitar players. Definitely not. We have steel string players in there. We've got people who would consider themselves fingerstyle players. The caveat is that all the music that we learn week to week uses fingerstyle technique. So a lot of them, for example, are some of my own arrangements, and they use fingerstyle technique. So if you're playing electric guitar, that's fine, as long as you're using fingerstyle technique. You could apply the same stuff to electric guitar. If you're using a pick, the music itself wouldn't apply. You would still benefit from the practice techniques that we talk about, but you wouldn't be, the music isn't designed to be played by somebody using a pick. That's the only caveat. So any type of guitar or guitarist is welcome, but you just got to be playing with your fingers. I'm learning, Monisha, I'm learning Stairway to Heaven finally, and it's kind of hard with the barring. The high E doesn't ring as my hands can't wrap around the neck of the guitar very well. All right, yeah, let's talk about bars. Are we good to spend the last couple minutes talking about bars and bar chord technique? Let me know in the chat. Alexander said the best benefit of Beyond the Guitar Practice Club is the opportunity of having Nathan's lessons in actual musical context. I'm sure it speeds up the learning by 10 times. Awesome. Thank you for that, Alexander. I'm honored to have you as a student in many of my programs. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about bars for a couple minutes. There's ultimately bars take just experimentation and exploration to get the feeling. But there are a few variables that you can tweak to try to maximize your results and minimize the effort that's required. So these are the things that you want to play around with. First of all, this goes back to this feeling of weight. Your force required to play this doesn't come from squeezing between your thumb and your fingers. It comes first from just the weight of your arm, and then by supplementing it, pulling back, physically flexing your bicep and driving your elbow back to pull those strings tight against the frets. Now, when we do that, you'll notice the guitar wants to move, so we have to apply counterweight and counter pushing with this arm. So we're essentially kind of doing a bear hug, pulling the guitar in tight toward our body. That's where we get the force that's required. Now, with that, you're actually getting two directions of force, which makes this so effective. We're pulling this way with this arm, which pulls the finger tight against the string. And then by pulling or pushing in with this arm, we're actually, you see what that does with the guitar? It pushes it out this way. That's pushing the strings into your fingers. So we've got two directions, the strings pushing into your fingers and your fingers pushing into the strings. That's what gives so much force. Driving arm back, that's lats, not bicep. I defy you to try to do that without having a flexed bicep. All right, your lats might be involved, but your bicep is definitely gonna be flexed when you're doing this. All right, now we've got the two directions of force. Beyond that, there's some other factors. You wanna make sure that you're rolling over slightly to the side of your finger so that you're avoiding the creases in your finger. Right? We've got these creases that if a string falls in, it's not gonna get the same amount of pressure, right? Because that part of your finger is elevated. So if you roll a little bit over to the side, that gives you a flatter profile so the pressure is more uniform across. All right? And then the other factor with that, when you roll over to the side a little bit, you can actually use this third element of force, basically, where you're kind of twisting your arm, almost like you're screwing in a screwdriver, right? Using a screwdriver. We can twist it in, that twists that side of the finger in tight against the strings. So it's this torquing motion where I'm feeling this twisting, pushing that side of my finger in tightly toward the strings. All right? Those are the main elements that you want to focus on, and it's a matter of just experimenting and wrestling with it to get that feeling down. All right? Those are some of the main elements to think about that will help you overcome those bar chord issues. Okay, well, that is our time. The timer went off, so I'm afraid I will have to leave you now. But the replay will be available from this shortly, so just check your email for that. And remember, click the button down below to learn more about the Practice Club to see if it's a good fit for you. Before we leave, let me know, did anybody sign up for the Practice Club already? Hassam purchased a subscription. Welcome, Hassam, to the Practice Club. I'm really excited to see you in there. But again, we can all click the button just down below just to see if it's a good fit for you. And if you want to join before enrollment closes this next Friday. Hassam says, what is the Jumpstart Arranging course? It's my beginner's arranging course. So all the YouTube videos that I put out are my own arrangements where I listen to somebody else's song and I adapt it to the guitar. So Jumpstart Arranging is a way that makes that easy and simple for you to make your first arrangement. If you're curious about doing that kind of creative side where it's not quite composing, but it's making a cover or an arrangement, to do that without any music theory really, like I break it down as simply as possible and I walk you through your very first guitar arrangement. Gustavo, how do we enroll? Click the button down below and then that'll take you to the sign up page and there's a button there to enroll. Mike is going to ask their parents. Excellent. Monisha, definitely want to join the practice club, but I'll be traveling the rest of the year, so I'll keep it on my list to invest in next year. Okay, awesome. Yeah, we'll open it again next year. Gandhi, will you still offer the pay once a year option? Yeah, that's available. You can sign up monthly or get 2 months free and a bonus course if you sign up for a year. Is the practice club for absolute beginners? That's any type of question like that, you can't answer 100% because everybody's going to struggle with different things. So I would say the pieces are similar on par with difficulty, but that doesn't mean that it's not for you. I would say if you benefited from this class today, you would still benefit from the workshop. There are some people in the practice club who don't even really play the pieces every week. They come and watch me work through it and join us for the group practice sessions and get all the practice insights that they can then apply to their beginner pieces that they're working on. So it's not just about playing the music itself, it's learning the insights that I share that can be applied to advanced pieces or beginner pieces. I have a bad musical ear. Will Jumpstart help with that? Definitely. Yeah, there's an ear training program that's included in the Jumpstart arranging curriculum. All right, cool. Well, again, I hope to see many of you in the practice club. Very excited to welcome you into that community. Regardless, thank you so much for joining the workshop today. I hope you learned a lot. Enjoy the piece Adelita, and remember to apply all the concepts that you learned today into your own practice so that you can improve faster, eliminate mistakes, and spend more time playing the music that you love. All right? Take care of yourself, and I'll see you next time.